You are welcome to this course, Racism and Ethnicity. The purpose of this course is for you to understand, after you are through with this course, number one thing you have to understand is this, that every student will find they will have learned more about what racism and ethnicity is. You knowing it is what helps you better in whatever you are doing. It makes you to live peacefully. It makes you to understand your society. It makes you to understand your nation. It makes you to understand the people you live with, the people you work with. At the end of this course, students will find practical tips on identifying racism and ethnicity and how to handle it. Because most of the challenges in life you're going to face is that you must know how to handle racism. You must know how to handle it. Not knowing how to handle it is what brings challenges in the society, even both in working places. Number three, the students will, or someone you know who is experiencing racism, you'll be able to explain better, be able to handle matters easily, and there will be harmony in places where we are. Let's consider some definitions now. When you are talking about racism, it's a belief or doctrine that is inherent differences among the various human races that determine cultural or individual achievement, usually involving the idea that one's own race is superior and has rights to rule others. And this is a big challenge we have all over the world. It is something you can see within your vicinity. It's something you can see all over the news, all over the newspaper, everywhere you turn to, you see these things. Racism is a policy, it's a system of government based upon or fostering such a doctrine that brings about discrimination. It always brings about hatred or intolerance of another race or other races. Racism, simply put, racism takes many forms that you can see in and around you in the society. It takes many forms and can happen in many places. Don't even just look at it and say, oh, it's localized in a certain area, it's not in this area. It includes prejudice, discrimination, or hatred directed at someone because their color, or ethnicity, or national origin, maybe where you come from. That's why all these things are taking place. People often associate racism with acts of abuse or harassment. However, it doesn't need to involve violence. Sometimes it doesn't come by violence or intimidating behavior. Take racial name calling and jokes, or consider situations when people may exclude or they are excluded from groups or activities because where they come from. It happens in our society. It happens in our country. It happens in this nation, especially in Nigeria. You see how some people are excluded from political appointments. You see how people, they dissuade them not to marry to some certain sectors, and it brings about some acrimony in the society. Racism can be revealed through people's actions as well as their attitudes. It can also be reflected in systems and institutions, like I've mentioned. In every institution you see, it's reflected in what people do from one place to another, from one nation to another nation. But sometimes it may not be revealed at all. Not all racism is obvious. For example, someone may look through a list of job applicants and decide not to interview people with certain surnames or certain religious names or certain name. So these are things people face day in, day out because of where they come from, because of their faith, because of their background. They decided to just relieve them of their job, relieve them where they work or where they live. Even in terms of accommodation, people will say, look, I don't want to accept such and such in my community or in my business or in my house. Beloved, racism is more than just words, beliefs, and actions. It includes all the barriers that prevent people from enjoying the dignity and equality because of their race. So I want you to see to this that racism is more than just words or beliefs or actions. In every way you see, it includes the barriers that have been placed there for people not to get over that hurdle. There are many. So you need to understand this day by day as you go in whatever you do. So these barriers are meant to prevent people from enjoying the dignity, the quality and equality because of their race. So what is ethnicity? Ethnicity is defined as a group of people who identify with each other based on common ancestral, social, cultural, or national experiences. Even as you begin to go in this course, you begin to find out the relationship between or the differences between ethnicity and, and the race or the racism. You begin to find out as you begin to go in this course the ethnicity versus nationality, the ethnicity versus the culture. At a point, we're still going to get to the theories of race and ethnicity that will make you to understand this better. Don't forget, ethnicity is defined as a group of people who identify with each other based on common ancestral, social, cultural, or national experience. They have something in common. There's something that binds them together in whatever they do. Furthermore, identity, however, is complex when you are looking at this issue of ethnicity. It comprises of how we see ourselves in relation to the world and how others see us. In other words, ethnicity, like race and gender, are social, political, and economic constructs. Understanding that also means understanding that humans are fallible and our constructions aren't always the same or correct. We see things from different perspectives. If you are given a certain subject, you are going to look at it from a different point of view. It can be in terms of food, it could be in terms of dressing. So, identity, when you come to ethnicity, is complex. Once again, it comprises of how we see ourselves in relation to the world and how others see us. So it all depends on how you present yourself, and that's how people see you. In other words, ethnicity, like race and gender, are social, political, and economic constructs. So, in any way, you must tend to see to it that everything work out well. Understanding that also means, well, that understanding we're talking about there in terms of social, political, economic constructs is that humans are fallible and our constructions aren't always the same. It's not going to be the same thing we're going to look at. When we look at a certain subject, we're not going to come out with the same meaning. And it's very, very important for us to understand that. What is racism and how can you spot it when you are in any place? How do you perceive it? How do you look at it? How do you pick it out that this is racism? The first step in stopping racism is understanding what it actually is. If you don't understand it, below, you can't get through it. You can't understand properly. Because there's some certain things you want to get into. You want to stop it. You want to do something about it, but you must have an understanding. Anything you don't understand, you are potentially going to abuse it. Your approach to it will be wrong, will be abnormal. But that is not always easy. Look, I want to stop this, and I must bring myself to an understanding, to understand the nitty-gritty, the how. How did it come by? And at this time, if you are not sure what racism is and what it looks like, that is okay. But at the end of this course, you tend to understand and appreciate what racism is all about, and in the way it is in the society today. Here in this particular teaching, we'll try to put a little bit guide to it so that when you are looking at it, you'll be able to get it. At this point, I want you to understand that racism is more than just being what? Being mean. Have you ever wondered why a black person can say in word, or why Asian people can make jokes about their own race, but as soon as a white person joins in, it seems it becomes a racist? Well, the reason why some things are considered racist and other aren't comes down to three important ideas. Please don't forget this: history, institutions, and power. History, institutions, and power. History, institution, and power. History, institution, and power is very, very important. These three things are very, very important for you to be able to understand these principles, how it works. Very, very important. You must tend to see it and know it. You not knowing it will be very difficult. Now, there's what we call unconscious bias. Unconscious bias, also sometimes known as implicit or hidden bias. You have a hidden bias about some certain things, about some certain group, in certain institution. It's what we call is a prejudice in favor or against one thing or person or group compared with another, usually in a way that is considered to be unfair. Let me let you understand it again. I said this unconscious bias is almost with people. It's a prejudice in favor of or against one thing or a person or a group compared with another, usually in a way that is considered to be unfair. Biases may be held by an individual, group, or institution and can have negative or positive consequences when dealing with such people, when relating with such gender, when you are relating with such class. Because you have a hidden bias, invariably it will play out. It will be seen. This one is called unconscious bias. And when you are living in that kind of unconscious bias, beloved, is very, very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. There are several times in life that a lot of people, either in the military, either in the academics, they find themselves in this biased environment, or in business, in every relationship. So all these things you need to understand. Now, another thing I want you to understand that who experiences racism. Many people experience racism behavior. Some groups experience racism at higher rates, while some at a lower rate. Why? Because people come from cultural diverse backgrounds, and they often have to deal with systemic forms of discrimination. Even you, my listener, now I'm very sure you must have been in this kind of system one way or the other. It's a systemic forms of discrimination. Such experiences limit the access that members of these groups enjoy to the opportunities and resources offered to many people. So, depending on your background, that is what you begin to see and experience sometimes. Systemic racism is bound up in historical advantage administration. Practices such as removing children from their families have caused huge amounts of hurt and pain for individuals and to families and communities. When you move people to another location, maybe there's some IGP camp and all those things that people find themselves, they find it difficult, either by war or by some certain situations. This shows up in lots of different ways. It will be evident that you see that people will begin to live in poor health and high rate of mental illness and family breakdowns. And these things are what we see every day in our society. But if you have not been part of it, you might not tend to understand. And other people too that suffer these kind of things are migrants and refugees. The migrants and refugees also regularly experience racism, in particular those who have recently arrived. And the media reports and commentary that use negative stereotypes about refugees and migrants can fuel prejudice against those groups in the wider community, the way it is. And then they begin to pick on them. They begin to see them from another perspective. Some years back, here when Ghanaians were having their challenges and Nigerians received them. But one day it comes to say, Ghana must go. So it's a big challenge that people face this kind of migrants and refugees that fear prejudice. These attitudes can make it difficult for new arrivals to find housing and jobs and to feel connected to their communities. Where does racism happen? So we'll be looking at it. Well, maybe you have not seen it, you say, I've not seen it, but I know as you are listening or whatever, or wherever you are, you know that there racism everywhere you are in relation to where you live, where you work. Racism can happen just about anywhere. 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 For example, if you find yourself in a place where you don't speak their language and they are speaking, it could mean a lot. Or some people find themselves around you and all of you are speaking a different language and they don't understand. They are bound to feel it. Because research indicates that the places where racism is experienced most frequently include in the neighborhood, And when people go to the shops, they begin to look at them one way or go to the market and in the workplace. You can imagine other spaces such as public transport, sporting events, or our schools. People go to school because at times this kind of thing are evident and it doesn't work well for people. Expression of racism can also be found in media. This happens when, for example, racial groups are represented in an unfair or negative light in news reports or commentary. Many regard the lack of a cultural diversity represented in media as another form of war racism. And it's very peculiar because there are a lot of information. Maybe they just pick a particular race or pick a particular profession and they begin to hammer some certain things in the media. And at the end of the day, it might not be that profession, might not be that career, might not be that race that is involved at all. And they just bring that kind of picture to play. In recent years, racism has become a particular problem online, whether it is offensive comments or social media, inflammatory memes or hate-filled videos shared online. Cyber racism has had a significant impact on the growth of racist attitudes that people begin to display in every walks of life. Those spreading racist messages can often do so with the benefit of anonymity. They don't want to be known. They don't want to be traced to it. They just create that scene. And that issue will just be there. And the people begin to have challenges in that area. Expressions of racism can also be found in media. This happens when, for example, racial groups are represented in an unfair or negative light in news reports or commentary. Many regard the lack of cultural diversity represented in media as another form of war racism. In recent years, like I've said, we begin to see this and people will begin to bring themselves under anonymity. Why are people racist? Because I want you to understand this, but time we begin to bring the difference, look at ethnicity now. When we begin to look at race versus ethnicity, you begin to understand the import of this teaching. People aren't born with racist ideas or attitudes. That's one thing I want you to understand clearly. Nobody. People are not born with racist idea or attitudes. Racism is something that is learned. There remain a small minority of people who believe that some races are superior to others. A belief in racial superiority or purity can lead to racial hatred. However, not all racism comes from hatred. Some of it comes from fear and anxiety. Because you just look at it, this way these people are going, they can overshadow us, they can overpower us, they can be more than us, they can shine us. So what do? Because of your fear and anxiety, you create that racism that is not there. That is not there, but because of the fear and anxiety, people may worry that some groups pose a threat, whether to the safety of the community or to the national identity. And that's why the opera, they just cook a story, they just cook something that they just peddle some rumor, and then they castigate the people, they castigate the group that they are not knowledgeable, they are not educated, or they are with some materials that is injurious or some information, and that is how that kind of thing starts. Another thing is this: ignorance can play a part of feeding people's racial attitudes. Dangerous. Ignorance. Ignorance, very dangerous. It plays one of the pivot role in people racial attitudes, as can a need to belong to one's group. Racism isn't always malicious. Sometimes the harm of racism can be done innocently because someone may not know better. Why is racism a problem? Racism causes harm to those who are on the receiving end. It hurts individuals, it hurts communities, it hurts the society at large. Very dangerous. And that is the edge where we are in. That's the problem the world is facing today. It causes harm to those who are on the receiving end. It hurts individuals, it hurts community, organization, groups, societies. Studies show that experiencing racism has profound effects on people's health and welfare. The effects can include feeling of sadness and anger, depression, even anxiety and depression comes up. The regular experience of racism can lead to people withdrawing from work or study and diminish their quality of life. Dangerous. And it could affect and can bring setback to the people in a certain gender, people in a certain group, people in a certain race. It can also hurt people's freedom and dignity. Those who endure racism can be made to feel they have less freedom or are second-class citizens. Beloved, the way you are seated and listening to me, where are you in the position of things? Has somebody hurt you? How is your freedom? How is your dignity? Have you been able to endure racism? Where you are, do you think you have a less freedom? Or what are you having? Do you see yourself as a second-class citizen? In a diverse country such as Australia, like Nigeria and other countries, the effects of racism aren't confined to individuals. It has the potential to affect all of us. Racial hostility creates a society where people don't trust and respect each other. It challenges our society's values and quality and fairness. We need to understand this. How have you been challenged, beloved? What are you going through? What is the challenge you are going through now? How can you use this medium to harness and do something for your life? It's very, very important. Like I've said, the essence of the course is for you to be able to understand what this racism is all about. How do you stand for it? What do you stand for? What do you tend to learn? You need to learn more about what racism is and the practical tips on identifying racism and how to handle it. Or possibly someone or you yourself, you are experiencing racism where you are. I'll give you time to ask your questions. I'll give you time to ask your questions. Yes, any question from people in the class? Yes. Okay, I thought there was. Yes, if there are no questions, the assignment for is how do you confront racist comments or hate speech or what we term as behaviors? How do you stand for racism? How do you stand for it? Identify and define other racism you know and consider the effects on various groups of the society. You send this assignment to henryrunshi@gmail.com. Don't forget what we are looking at in the broad, we'll be looking at for the next 5 weeks is racism and ethnicity. And we're looking at it that at the end of the day, you will learn more about what racism and ethnicity is all about. So in any way, you'll be able to know more on what this racism is all about. We've tried to look at what racism is. What you need to understand that racism take many forms and can happen in many places. Never forget, and it includes prejudice, it includes discrimination, it includes hatred directed at someone because of their color, because of their ethnicity or national origin. So you have to come to this understanding that this issue, this subject matter, this course will help you in your relationship, even in your counseling. It will help you in your relationship, in your business, in your career, other academic career, other political, whatever other business. When you travel to some places all over the world, you will have known their nuances. You will have known their demeanors, and you'll be able to know how to handle it. Because why am I saying so? Because a lot of people often associate racism with acts of abuse and harassment too. Like I've said, it doesn't need to involve violent or intimidating behavior. It's just like some things that look like a joke now between you and some other friends. Another person comes there, it doesn't look like a joke again. Yes, it doesn't look like a joke, but in your own community, it's a joke. But when other people come right now to talk to you on that thing, it doesn't look like a joke again. Like I've told you, racism is more than just words. It's more than just beliefs. It's more than just actions. Like I've made you to understand, it includes all barriers that prevent people from enjoying dignity, quality, and equality because of their race, because of their background, because of what they are from. They can't be employed. They can't get to a certain cadre of their career, of a business. They can't head a certain department because of their race. So I trust that at the end of the day, you will tend to understand more. And in your course of traveling across the nations, in your course of your day-to-day activities, meeting people either in your business area or you become a leader in a certain area, it will help you to handle some matters with wisdom. You will not have this bias base of what has been placed inside you unconsciously, what you grew up, and then it comes to display. We're going to meet in another 1 week. Try and do your assignments, send it to that box. Till we meet, I say thank you for listening. Have a beautiful, laudable weekend. So, but if you still have some questions, pass it. It will be well, or your contribution, pass it to the email, and it will be handled accordingly. Stay safe this season and stay blessed.